Hi, my name is Chastity. I'd like to thank Kitsap Strong along with the Marvin Williams Center for inviting me today to have a discussion around a topic that affects a lot of Americans, and that topic is clutter. And so, while clutter is in our life, we can't ignore the fact that clutter affects our time, it affects our resources, it affects our clarity of mind, it affects our stress levels. And as we prepare to go into work again, into school again, or wherever we're going to go, it will be very beneficial to get our house in order and to begin to declutter and organize our spaces. And so we're going to talk about the different steps that are necessary to get a space organized and clean and set up for success. But it'll all be back again if we don't get to the bottom of some issues. Oftentimes, we talk about multiple types of tips for decluttering mistakes or how to organize something, but we know that if true change is going to occur, we have to get to the root cause of why we have clutter in the first place. And so, those are some things I'd like to talk about today in conjunction with. Um, not only uh, why we got cluttered, but some steps to get decluttered, some places to find resources. Those types of things are what I'd like to discuss with you today. So, the first thing I'd like to share with you is a very transparent story. It's my story, it's how I became cluttered. It's not always nice to talk about, but again, if we're going to experience success, we have to be honest about where these behaviors have come from. And so we can look back on psychology and we can look at that iceberg image. I know that if you've been in any type of training, you've seen the iceberg where you have the bottom of the iceberg, which has all our norms, values, beliefs, things like that. And it's huge. But then you have this small little part of the iceberg that everyone can see, and that's where the behaviors are. What types of behaviors in this respect? It would be clutter. Like, why do I have so many things? Why do I need 65 pairs of shoes? Why do I need 35 handbags? Why do I need every tool invented? Even though those tools can be performed by maybe another tool that I have. What keeps me from letting go of inanimate objects? So we have to ask ourselves the difficult questions in order to get to change. So I'd like to share my story with you. It starts in New Jersey, and I was around 8 years old, and probably like most of you, I watched Saturday morning cartoons, and during Saturday morning cartoons, that's when you learn what the latest and greatest toys were. And one of the latest and greatest toys for me was the Barbie Dream Camper. So I'm gonna roll it on over here. Now this is today's version. It looked a little different back then, but this is the Barbie Dream Camper. And it was the object of my affection. And so while I looked at it every weekend, it seemed, there's multiple commercials, um, I couldn't have a Barbie Dream Camper. Primarily because I had a single mom and she tried her best, but it just wasn't in the budget. And so um, I, along with my family, we took a trip to Philadelphia, and I got to play with one of my cousins. And I remember going into her room, and compared to my room, her room was like a young girl's fantasy. I mean, it had a canopy bed, the walls were pink, there were toys everywhere. And the straw that broke the camel's back was she had a Barbie dream camper. And while I would love to say that in that experience, I celebrated with her, I played with the dream camper, and then went on my merry way, that was not the case. I became jealous, I became angry, and I made a vow in my heart that when I got old enough to work, that I would buy every and anything that I wanted. There would be nothing that would keep me from having things. And that was because of what I saw then and how I allocated my feelings. And so, moving on into my adult life, I saw a pattern of behavior. What was that pattern of behavior? That pattern of behavior was I bought every and anything that I wanted. And before you knew it, I didn't have the stuff had me. And so it populated the home and it became a point of contention. I mean, whether it was a garage, the living room, the bedroom, particularly the kids' room. And, it's really interesting because before I knew it, when I had kids, I would buy them every toy that they ever wanted, because I didn't want them to feel the way that I felt. And so that vow and that experience produced behaviors in me, like the top of that iceberg, that caused me to be cluttered. Now, we all have different types of experiences. I don't know what the bottom of your iceberg looks like. Maybe it was, and I had to bring these for illustration because they're super awesome, um, because they're inclusive, right? And so maybe your experience was you didn't look like the rest of the kids. And maybe that made you lose a feeling of control, kind of like how I felt. I had lost a feeling of control, and I became jealous. And those are the feelings it produced. But maybe a handicap is something that contributed to the way that you feel. And maybe it was another appearance. These inclusion dolls are absolutely wonderful. I think that everyone should be represented. And so, um, this doll is just as beautiful as the rest. But sometimes when we are teased and we start to feel out of control or a little inadequate, we have a tendency to do things that may be a little bit out of balance sometimes. And for me, it was jealousy. And it was, I was going to take back a little bit of that control by being able to buy every and anything that I wanted to buy. Well, like I said, I became cluttered and my children were also cluttered. I mean, there was stuff everywhere. I thought that I was doing them a favor by providing all these different toys. I mean, wall to wall toys. However, if I were to be honest today, I know that if I have a whole bunch of visual distractions in my viewpoint, then I may have a tendency to have difficulties making decisions. Like the clarity just isn't there. And so, of course, kids sometimes will get extremely frustrated, and a parent may or may not know why they're frustrated, but sometimes it's the environment that they're in. They need a little bit less in their environment. All those visual distractions are kind of hard to deal with. So, again, I don't know what your iceberg is, but like me, you're going to have to go back to that time and really start to explore and ask those difficult questions as to why, like I said, you feel like you have to have, or I felt like I had to have 65 pair of shoes, 35 purses, all the tools, all the different you name it. We can collect anything. So for me, it was the clothes and it was the toys, things like that. But maybe for you, it's cars. Maybe it's movies. Maybe it's, whatever. Like I said, the tools. Maybe it's hats. Maybe it's um, mugs or whatever the case may be. Clutter is apparent. And it can bombard and take over anyone's life at any moment. And so I just want to, draw the attention also to the things that we declare. Like, I think this color is great. It's green for jealousy. That's exactly how I felt. And as a result of that jealousy, I got all tangled up in these vows and commitments that I made around my experience. And that wasn't okay. And it didn't produce anything good as a result of me and my declarations. And so I don't know what your experience was. I don't know what type of declarations you made or what you're all tangled up in, but just how you declare those things, you can declare other things. You can declare, I don't have to buy anything that I want. It causes clutter, so I can make that conscious effort to make changes in our life, in my life, and you as well. So we talked about getting tied up and making declarations and how we can make new declarations. And so I found um, that it was pretty easy to be honest. It is pretty easy to be honest. It's just the actions after, right? To be honest. And I was able to get most of the stuff out of the house, but our garage was still an issue. And so this was a particular challenge because I had a home based business and I stored some of my stuff in my garage, but the garage was like the last holdout in our home. And so it was difficult to deal with a more organized home, but then I would go into the garage and it would just interrupt my business. Every time I opened the garage, I was worried that someone would see that I had things just in disarray in my garage. And so we decided, as a result of a community cleanup, the waste management came around and they were taking away some items designated for garbage, and they were taking them away for free. And so who doesn't like free, right? And so I talked to my husband and we got inside of the garage and we got it totally cleaned out. And I mean, it was absolutely wonderful. But there was one box still, and that was my box of trophies from high school and college. I played basketball and I had experienced some success. I mean, like this is what I identified with success, trophies, accolades. And so what I realized was those trophies, even though it was success, they offered a barrier for me. Um, and it seems kind of weird to consider a success a barrier. However, because I didn't change how I saw myself as this top athlete from high school and college, and that's how I identified with who I was in present day. But the problem was, I had 3 kids, my body was different, and this is not what I was doing. This is not what I was currently doing. And so, holding on to past ideas of who I was a barrier to my success and moving on and really experiencing my very own current greatness. And so, I had to truly come to grips with that. And so, for me, it had to be a little drastic. And so I ended up putting all my trophies, including my 6th grade certificate from the sand sculpting contest. We all have our stuff, y'all. But I ended up throwing them away. And when I got rid of them, what I realized is that my perception of myself began to change. It began to look at who I am today. Uh, what is my optimal capacity today? What is my greatness today? What can I do? How can I um, impact the lives of others? How can I touch my community? And so as I began to really identify with these changes, the garage was cleaned out. My husband and our sons, they organized all of my home-based supplies that were in the garage. And I mean, it was truly an experience. And before I knew it, I wasn't overwhelmed coming into the garage, stressed out with stuff hanging on old treadmills or ellipticals or weight cages. Yeah, I mean, nobody's skinny, but we got all these exercise devices in our garage that are offering like nothing to us, that we're taking anyway. And so it was a really nice experience to go into a clean and organized garage where my business supplies were all set up and organized in a way that it was effective and efficient. And can I tell you that instead of me being overwhelmed when I went into the garage, I began to think in a way that was innovative. So I just thought of new ways to do things. Ingenuity started to come out, like more genius ways to do things. And so I started to speed up my time and adjust the different ways to utilize my resources and my business. And as a result, you guys, my business tripled in 1 month. And that was because I released the clutter. And so, it was a process going back and looking at what happened in the past that caused me to feel this way and to behave this way. Think about what I had said in the past, the vows that I had made, and to look at how I saw myself as, I mean, realistically, not who I was, but who I am. And it really allowed a lot of freedom. So I was able to purge those items, but I was also doing pretty much a cleansing of myself, and becoming a new creature, and thinking about stuff in a different way. Successes, I can't necessarily identify with successes because things change. And so who I am today, who my greatness today is all dependent upon like the here and now, not on yesterday. And so if you have those jeans that are half your size now, it's okay to let them go. Go get a nice pair of jeans that fit you nicely, but can fit you today. And so you don't have to worry about that stress of, I'm not good enough, I'm not skinny enough. And then if you have just a lot of this stuff in your closet, let's see, one of the statistics is via GQ. Women have approximately 150 items in their closet, but only wear 50%. And so the other 50% is just storage. And so these clothes that are in our closets, I mean, they're just dreams, of what I may be able to fit in the future. But sometimes we just have to be realistic, like of who we are, where we are today. So that image of what we may have wanted, we can let that go too. We can declutter that. And so I just encourage you to think about those different steps. What happened? What did I say that caused me to have this behavior? And how am I looking at myself? Another startling statistic: most women have $550 worth of clothing that still have tags on them. That's startling when you think of all the needs in the community, to think that that resource is there, but it's in the closet. And so we kind of want to let those things go and, perhaps send it to, let's see, there are a bunch of Kitsap County different places that you could send your used items or your new items. Check out the Coffee Oasis, check out the YWCA, something to get the benefit out of this stuff that is being stored in the closet. And so I did a class a little while ago, and there was a lady who struggled with socks. And so she just had, and I know it might seem weird to you, but to her it makes total sense. Just like for me, clothes made total sense. And so she had an issue with socks. And so we talked about that, and she is able to donate her socks to shelters. One of the most desired needs during the winter time for homeless is socks. And so what a great opportunity to bring those things together. her need to release and their need to receive. And so we're really excited to come to that understanding. So just think about how you can best uh, get rid of your items. They don't have to go into the landfill. Maybe you can upcycle them. Maybe you can donate them to Goodwill once they open up. There are a ton of things that you can do. If you have cotton around, if you want to wash it and donate it to those that are making masks that perhaps can, you know, turn them into masks and donate them to the medical community, that's a way to utilize them as well. So, there is a way to responsibly discard our stuff without feeling like we're wasting our money. Which, if we're honest, if we weren't using it, we were wasting it anyway, right? So, again, it's not going to be comfortable, but it's something that we have to do. So, one exercise I'd like for you to do before we tackle getting your spaces organized, let's do a little exercise. You want to get a pencil or a pen out and a piece of paper and take yourself through the exercise. Why am I cluttered? What happened? What have I vowed? How have I seen myself? Am I being realistic? Can I let go of the things that I've attached to these unrealistic thoughts or ideas? So on your paper, you want to answer questions like who, what, where, when, and how, and see where that takes you. So I want to do a small illustration. The 5S technique is one that's found in Lean, and if you are working in any type of industry, if you've had any training on being more effective or efficient with your time, you've probably heard of the 5S technique. And so the 5S techniques are some steps that we'll take. So let's think about a kitchen drawer. Imagine there's just a bunch of utensils in there. And so you want to get that clean and organized. And so what you want to do is the first step is you want to sort. So you want to have a keep or a discard pile or toss pile. The utensils you're going to keep, you're going to put in one pile or maybe in a bag. The ones you're going to toss, you want to put into another. The next step you want to take is you want to clean your space. I used to have a business where we did cleaning, and believe me, your utensil drawer needs some attention. And so make sure that you clean them out, and then you want to set them in order. So what do you do to set them in order? Set it in order, excuse me. You want to measure your drawer, and then you want to clean it, and then you want to make sure that the organizational tools that you're going to use to put into the drawers fit your drawers, and they will serve the purpose at which you desire. So that's setting things in order. And that's also cleaning. The next thing you'd want to do is to standardize. So what is standardizing? Every time I wash my dishes and I'm emptying the dishwasher, I want to make sure that the items that I've designated for that particular drawer in those particular spots is where I always put them. So I want to be consistent. I want to standardize. And so next, I want to sustain. So all the hard work I've done, I want to make sure that I'm able to sustain the work that I've done. I may find that there are a couple things that do the same, perform the same task, so I can release one of those items. I don't need 3 cheese graters. I only need 1. So we want to make it a point to sustain, check on our stuff on a regular basis. And if you're organizing your refrigerator, if that's your area of concern, perhaps the time that you organize it is when you go grocery shopping. So the day before I go grocery shopping, I want to empty it out and make sure that I get all those potential science projects out the back and get it all cleaned out before I put my new stuff in there. And so that will be helpful. So I want to also offer a couple of places where you can go to find organizational supplies. And so One of my favorite places is IKEA. Wonderful, wonderful options for organizing. Another place is a Container Store. The Container Store is pretty high on my list, mainly because they offer a lot of diversity in their choices. And so you can say you want a drawer organizer. You can pick one in metal, plastic, wood. I mean, it just seems to be endless, but they have a lot of organizational tools for us to choose from. Walmart and Target have some options too. I don't think they are as expansive as the Container Store or IKEA, but they are there. Also, TJ Maxx and Ross, they are good for those drawer organizers, for socks, things like that. But all that can be found at the Container Store. Let's see. Think outside the box. So, one thing we may not think of, a utensil organizer, for our forks, knives, spoons. If you have an extra one or if you want to purchase one for this purpose, they fit tea bags perfectly. And so if you are looking for something to organize your tea bags, say you have them all inside of a drawer, and every time you want a cup of tea, you have to kind of shuffle through there and move stuff around, you're wasting time, right? If it was organized in one of those utensil trays, you would be able to find it a lot more easily. And you won't waste any money because when something's gone, you'll know it's gone instead of guessing to see if it's gone. And now you have two of something when you already had it to begin with. And so that's something to think about. So, the last thing I would like to say is decluttering is important once you get to the bottom of why you do things, thinking about the vows that you made and looking at yourself in today's context. I'm sure that you will experience a lot more success as it pertains to being organized and setting yourself up for success and ridding your house of all that unnecessary clutter. I'd like to encourage you to make sure that you declutter and dispose of your things in a more responsible way than just sending it to the landfill. But I do want to say that the topic of decluttering, it goes beyond just removing stuff. It is relationships, toxic relationships. Perhaps it's finances. Am I struggling with stewardship? What am I paying? What am I using all my money for? If it's for eating out, maybe you want to declutter that and let that go. And experience a little bit more success in your finances. I don't know about you all, but I found that I spent a lot less money on food when during the COVID period, and so that may be your experience as well. And I encourage you to keep that momentum going. I hope to as well. Another area that clutter just invades us is our health and wellness, and eating things that we're not supposed to eat, not exercising, decluttering those thoughts that I don't need to exercise, or decluttering those thoughts of I want to eat this cookie. And so decluttering your life series is more than just decluttering stuff. It's decluttering anything that is negative or prohibits you from being successful. And so I just encourage you to apply those questions, who, what, where, when, how, to any area of your life that you're not experiencing success and you may need to declutter something out of. My name is Chastity, and again, I'd like to thank Kitsap Strong, and I'd like to thank the Marvin Williams Center for putting forth educational opportunities for Kitsap County to improve even in these difficult and challenging times. I pray that you all are well, take care, and happy decluttering.